So Michael here again, and this time I'm focusing on the second part of your assignment. First thing I'm going to say about this is you can do this assignment one of two ways. So you can split it up into subheadings and do number 1, introduce a place in society, number 2, number 3, okay? Or you could do number 1 to start off with, and then you could do number 2 followed with a little bit of number 3, number 2 followed by a little bit of number 3, so that you might identify the groups, and then you might bring in recognition of the specific strategies that you might use. That's up to you. I'm not telling you how to write it. You might decide that it works better one way, or you might decide that it works better another way. It's not for me to tell you how to do that, I think, but use your preferences on this, okay? So, the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is that you've got to pick one area. Now, I know I said that before, but I'm going to keep on reiterating that. If you decide to pick disability, or you decide to pick gender, or you decide to pick ethnicity, you can do them in a broad sense. So I'm going to do disability, gender, and ethnicity. Or you can do it in a more specific sense. So you might focus on specific disabilities. You might focus on autistic spectrum disorder, Down syndrome, somebody who has got physical impairments. Or you might focus on focus on ethnicity. You might decide to focus on South Asians specifically, or people who are from a different religious background. So might look at Muslim females or something like that, okay? But you don't have to. And that's the thing, you could go broader. I think in terms of finding the literature we've looked at so far has often been broader. You might have found other stuff in the past that you want to use that might relate specifically, and you might find other stuff, but you don't have to. If you do decide to go specific, please make sure that you outline the differences within that group, so that you outline possibly what South Asian is in comparison to Chinese, for example. Okay, so you make clear the needs or the specific background to that group. But also, if you go broad, you might say that this is the experience of part of that group. Actually, this isn't always the experience of everyone in that group, and compare it to somebody else, which is fine. I'd expect you to pick 2 to 4 key themes, and that will be related from what you've read, okay? So what you've read around disability, and when we covered the Coates and Vickerman paper, they had quite clear themes, and some of the themes that you see me talk about are quite useful in that. But the themes will be driven by what you've read and by your particular group, okay? So, a couple of definitions. I've just taken these from the lecture slides, so you can pick them up, you can find them. The points that Armour makes here about defining disability is something that you may want to include earlier in your section 1, but also within your discussion that actually there's different views about disability. So we could do this. This is the experience, but you know what? There are different views and there are different perceptions, so I'm only taking one of them. In terms of sex and gender, be careful in terms of using the term sex, in terms of using the term gender. If you're talking about mixed sex PE, well, that is split by sex. So remember what Stuart was talking about, sort of PE is often split by sex. It is split by your biology, your chromosomes, and your reproductive organs, whereas gender is the socially constructed roles and behaviours. So if you're talking about that concept, be careful when you use one and when you use the other, okay? Because you might be saying, actually, I think we should do mixed sex PE. And you might say that by doing mixed sex PE, that will challenge gender constructs. Right, so you can see how we've done it there. That we're not referring to the two as being the same. That by having that mixed sex group, by having male and female together, we are challenging the socially constructed roles, behaviours and so on of gender. So make sure that you use the terms appropriately and that you let these definitions inform your writing as well, okay? And again, if you decide to do ethnicity, just be aware that some of the points that you apply to one group don't necessarily always apply to the other group. And just consider that when you're doing your writing. Okay, sorry. Now, I'm not going to spend a long time on the themes that you look at, because I think the themes that you look at will be informed from what you found. But if you look here, I've got some specific themes, okay? Some of them apply more to some groups than others. But if you look, the idea of stereotypes, I think, keeps occurring within ethnicity, within gender, and a little bit within disability, not so much, but how stereotypes of individuals informs their ability to act within a physical education or sports coaching session. How appropriate the setting is. So again, I think this maybe fits more to disability and to females, but how appropriate is the setting for conducive learning for individuals in this setting? So in the disability stuff, it talks about ramps. For females, the setting might be to do with the uniform, or it might be to do whether they're with boys or whether they're not with boys, or whatever, okay, what they're wearing when they're taking part. The activity, I think, for disability, for ethnicity, for gender, relates to them all, so you could decide to use that. That are the activities reinforcing or are they socially constructing those physical barriers? Perception of the self, again, masculinity, femininity, how able do I feel I am, how disabled do I feel I am, how does that PE, sport and coaching experience inform me, and so on, okay? So they're all of the points there. Now, what I think you've got to be careful to do, and I think Stuart brought up the point about primary and secondary socialisation yesterday. Now, predominantly, I would suggest that actually, because we're focusing from a pedagogy perspective, that you're thinking more about aspects of primary socialisation. So yourself as a teacher, as a coach, how that is physically socialising that individual that you're working with. I think education possibly came up in the secondary stuff, but I think it's about how the people that they're engaging with on that micro level, if you like, are causing themes, are related to these themes. So stay away from things like the media, things like this is happening in the Premier League, this is the Kick Racism Out campaign, because we're not really focusing on that in this assignment. This is about in this sort of more sort of micro level, if you'd like. This is more about what's happening at the, what I would suggest as being at the earlier phases, okay? Right, that's all I'm going to add to this video, so I'm just going to stop it there, and I'll do the next one in a little while. Thank you very much for listening.